Let's join Heather and our instructional leadership coach, Dr. Eryn Van Acker, as they talk about this week's high leverage practice.
Welcome to Little Bits of TLC, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of education. Join our host, Heather Volchko, as this season we focus on high leverage practices, HLPs. Each episode will examine a different HLP, essential strategies designed to enhance teaching and improve outcomes across various educational settings. These practices focus on collaboration, assessment, social, emotional, behavioral support, and instruction, benefiting all K-12 students. I hope you're ready to be both challenged and inspired, because this season is all about mastering the HLPs. This is Little Bits of TLC. Looking for something that actually fits your life? TLC University is here for that. Each week, we spotlight something different. A webinar with real-world insights, a hangout-style interview, and a hands-on workshop or a Q&A where we answer your questions. It's flexible, it's self-paced, and most come with CEUs. So whether you're looking to grow, reflect, or just listen in, there's something here for you. And it's all in one place. university.thresholdlearning.org. That's where you'll find show notes, professional blogs, a full catalog of ACE-accredited courses, and downloadable resources. It all just keeps growing. So whether you're walking the dog, commuting, or taking a breather between the daily grind, TLC University meets you where you are. Head to university.thresholdlearning.org and check out what's new this week. See you then.
Teachers make content, skills, and concepts explicit by showing and telling students what to do or think while solving problems, enacting strategies, completing tasks, and classifying concepts. Teachers use explicit instruction when students are learning new material and complex concepts and skills. They strategically choose examples and non-examples and language to facilitate students' understanding, anticipate common misconceptions, highlight essential content, and remove distracting information. They model and scaffold steps or processes needed to understand content and concepts, apply skills, and complete tasks successfully and independently.
This week, we're talking about high leverage practice 16, using explicit instruction. So, Eryn, for you in your practice, how have you seen this show up?
I use explicit instruction across the board within my practice, both within the classroom and helping support teachers now with expanding their expertise.
So, I'm curious then if you're using it in your classroom or you've seen it used in more of your student practice, what counts as explicit instruction? There's all different kinds of instruction. So, what really makes it explicit?
So really it's helping design and deliver your instruction so that it meets the range of needs of students. So you want to have like some of the key areas are selecting critical content. You want to sequence it logically. You want to break down complex components into smaller units and then really kind of highlight what the examples and non-examples are of that content that you're teaching.
Yeah, I always said it like it was teaching everything cards face open, right? Like, I'm not keeping any secrets. I'm going to show you what we're doing. I'm going to show you how we're doing it. We're going to do that together. I'm going to point out, see how this is actually matching what this is, right? Like, everything the whole way through is so direct that it's going to be really, really hard to not pick up, whatever it is that I am trying to help you understand.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, so I think a lot of times we see it being discussed as far as like an I do, we do, you do, right? So the I do is where the teacher's really modeling, doing a think aloud of the content and making it very explicit what's going on both outside the teacher's body and internally within their brain. We do is it's guided practice, providing lots of opportunities to respond, giving feedback throughout that guided practice. And then the you do is really providing those opportunities for students to demonstrate the skills independently. And again, providing explicit feedback as they're doing those skills to really make sure that they do have gained that expertise.
Yeah, thank you for calling out that the I do is not just I'm going to do it for you and then you just need to pick it up so that we can do it together. You're modeling not just what it looks like on the outside to accomplish it, but what is actually going through your mind so
Mhm.
that you can do, what it is that I am, you can observe me doing.
Yeah, and I think especially like you'll see that a lot in a lot of early reading interventions and just general curriculum, where even just the teachers sitting there discussing as they're demonstrating how to visualize while they're reading, right? So, like, this is what the sentence says. So, in my mind, this is what I'm picturing, right? To really demonstrate to and make it really clear to the students what they're doing and what visualization means.
Yeah, it's visualization is a really great example because it is something that is so internal. I know as a teacher, it was just like draw what you're thinking. Well, if I'm not a great artist, then what is in my mind may not actually be translating to what's coming through my hands, right?
Right,
But
right.
like, how do you even know what that is or if it matches? Those were always some of the most fun, conversations that I would strike up with my guys because I would, read something and then what they would come back with, I'm like, where did that even come from? Wait, make this make sense to me. And the more they would talk it out and explain it, I'm like, oh, now I'm tracking. Okay. So in my mind, I saw it this way. Right. And like you're making those connections, but that opened up so many cool conversations to be able to say your perspective, my perspective, and like, how can we walk this out? But I think
Mhm.
the point of explicit instruction is that we can still at least, this where it's visualization, right? Like there is a skill that we're practicing but through my instruction, we should not all be walking out with a million different perspectives of what it is that's going on. Explicit instruction is going to derive that hard, like so clear that you're going to know exactly what it is that we're doing and you'll be able to tell me it back and, ideally, then also be able to perform it as well.
Absolutely, and I think even within that example, if we're just teaching visualization without explicit instruction, well, and also with it, you're going to get those, right, misconceptions and different
Mhm.
perceptions that students have. But I think it also will come back of like, "Oh, here's a huge area that was really muddy to the student that they didn't understand within that text," right?
Mhm.
And with explicit instruction, we can think in the forefront and try to tackle that to begin with, right? Like these words might be difficult for the student. So I'm going to explain those before we start to read the passage, right? Provide examples or non examples or build background knowledge and make sure that the students really understand what those words mean or concepts mean before we begin to read to try to mitigate that, right? That issue so that it's not all from the end, right? Like, having to go back through and be like, "Oh, okay, you didn't understand this whole half of the paragraph. Let's explain it," right? And get back into it. And you'll
Yes.
still have misconceptions even with explicit instruction, right? But it's really trying to target that and minimize, right, how many of those misconceptions and understandings that they have.
For sure, but I think that's why I always love the we do portion of it because that was my feedback on if I do stuck or not and where I maybe didn't hit what they needed because then they understood something that I did not mean to communicate. And so that we do section for me was just like my playground where I'm like, that's natural feedback on my instruction. It's natural feedback on their learning. Like it was so rich for me. And I
Mhm.
so oftentimes run into educators who are really great or they think they're really great at I do because that's like what they're trained to do is to communicate and to teach. Right. And so like they have a lot of those skills and competencies. And then they just go straight to you do.
Right.
But there's this massive gap where even if you're trying to engage in some kind of maybe discussion during like an I do section, which isn't technically explicit instruction anyway, but like if that's what like the only piece you're getting, you're really only just getting like, did they understand what I said or not? You're not actually doing it together. So you're not getting that natural feedback that happens as part of that we do process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or I think in the we do, right, they have like 2 students provide an example or tell them what the steps are. I think it's like really making sure in that we do portion, you're providing so many opportunities to respond and feedback that you have like a pretty good grasp of how all of your students are doing and if they're ready for that you do piece. Or
Yeah.
maybe some of those students then need to go bit into a small group and do another we do section right before they're let off into their independent practice.
But there you go. I mean, that's differentiation. Now you've got all these like groups that can do the remediation or acceleration, like all these things. It's all of that is coming out of this we do portion of it, explicit instruction, which I don't know. I'm curious what you think because so many educators are so well trained in the I do portion of it. If we're focusing so heavily on all of this opportunity that's sitting within the we do, sometimes I do can get maybe feel like it's shortchanged, right? Like, now all of a sudden I could do all of this great I do instruction, but now it's really like a mini lesson, which
Mhm.
to some, professionals who especially I'm thinking of like our secondary folks who are content experts, right? And they love the content and communicating that content. Like, what would you recommend to them so that they can still feel like you're being like good instructors? You're helping your students learn and you're communicating your knowledge and and getting their investment in them learning what it is that you're excited about, but also adhering to kind of that I do, we do, you do, or like leveraging aspects of explicit instruction within their teaching practices.
That's a great question. I think for me, what I've done in the higher grade levels is I would really kind of like chunk my lessons, right? So it is still the I do is still a mini lesson. And then we do a we do, a you do portion, but then we go back to the I do, right? But that has really helped my students who many of them would struggle to be able to, sit through an entire lesson, attend for long periods of time. Like a lot of times the I do is wonderful, but if it gets too long, you're going to lose students, not because you're not engaging, but just because they've lost the capacity to continue to attend, right? So that I think that would provide that ability, right, to do as much of the I do that teachers want to provide, but also allowing for that extra time, right, to be able to do the we do, you do in kind of a way that would sit well with what students have the capacity to engage with. Or just making sure that you're incorporating a lot of we do within your I do, right? Like if you want to give a longer lesson from the get go, right? Like provide your examples in kind of a mini lesson way, and then make sure that it's structured with opportunities to respond and then move on to the next concept, right? So that way you're also kind of like within your sequence, right? From your easiest to the more complex ideas within your lesson, you're making sure and getting a grasp like, do my students understand these easier tasks before I then start to teach them in more complex areas?
Yeah, I appreciate how you're also kind of calling out that it's maybe not always just for the teacher, right? Like it's no critical feedback to me as an instructor that my students don't have the attention span that they would need to get through something that I've built in this way. So it's like I can actually do everything I want to do if I structure it slightly differently. And then I can trap them into attending with me if I just, I do, we do, I do, we do, I do, we do, a few loops through that, as opposed to just a bunch of I do. And then, okay, now, go forth and conquer. I appreciate that that's like part of this conversation because sometimes I feel like it's not always, right? Like, it's like teachers have a lot to offer. They've got a lot of, knowledge and skills and competencies and all of those things. And so sometimes it can feel like a professional failure when the students are not then keeping pace with what it is that I think is really great.
Right.
But it doesn't always have to be that way.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things I learned in the classroom was I need to talk less
Mm,
across the board. Like I talk too much, right? And I really need to be able to give that voice to the students and like the more they're talking, the more they're engaging, the more they're doing, the better learning and outcomes they're going to have, right? So it's
yeah.
really kind of, yeah, I might have many wonderful things to say about this topic and think that I'm giving the best examples, but I really need to like stop and break down and figure out, are my students understanding this? Are they grasping what I think I'm putting out there? And if not, I need to provide different examples and non-examples, and if they do have it, then great, now we can move on, right? I don't need to keep hounding the same items.
Yeah. And I mean, more than an exit ticket, right?
Right.
Like, so I'm curious, we're talking about, we've said I do, we do, you do a million times here. So when we're using explicit instruction, I know I've worked with some folks that think that they're running explicit instruction, but they're missing some critical pieces. So I know at the beginning, when you and I first started talking today, you listed off a whole bunch of different pieces that are the components within I do, we do, you do, right? Like what are those components? Are there any of those pieces that you see practitioners either not doing regularly or that they think they're doing it, but they're not maybe actually doing it the way that would need to be done for it to really be explicit instruction?
A lot of times I'll see instructors identifying the critical content, but they might not be highlighting it or making it in the forefront enough to where it's explicit, to use that term, to the students, right? To where it's really clear in their mind of like, oh, these are the key concepts that I need to know from this lesson. So I think there can just be so much information that, especially for a lot of our students with EBD, might have difficulty identifying like which of those do I actually need to know, right? Like, or I need to know all of them. It can just become so much. So I think really highlighting like here are the key areas that we're focusing on, and now this is how it all kind of like all our extra details or concepts relate to those key areas. And I think again, just really the think-alouds. I don't always see that,
Mm.
especially outside of like grades K through 3, right? We kind of lose a lot of those think-alouds.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, my background is primarily secondary, and I know I taught all content in secondary, and so being part of different departments and hearing how they talk about how they do lesson planning or how they're doing, planning their units, Think Aloud was not part of it, but that was something that in our either like resource pullout or even just like kids who were just struggling, we would do that with them, and it was like these massive light bulbs would go off because they finally could see what was going on inside the
Mhm.
teacher's head because they just knew that they were supposed to do it, but they didn't know how to do it. But the assumption was that they should or could already. And so, like, actually putting words to it and processing through what's going on internally, externally was
Mhm.
such a massive game changer for all of my older students, students that I thought even had skills that then we would do a think aloud that then that skill actually landed for the kid where I'm like, oh gosh, I thought you already had that. And now all
Mhm.
of a sudden you actually do. But yeah, a massive strategy that, yeah, you're right. I think is kind of overlooked in secondary.
Mhm. And then I think also just making sure that you have high levels of opportunities to respond and providing specific feedback. I think we miss the bar on that sometimes as well. And again, I think with some of that, well, not even necessarily the higher ed, but or secondary ed, but where if a student gets it wrong, right, then you go to another student. It's like, that's right. See, now you understand it. Okay, great. We move on, right? But it's like, hey, if they gave you the wrong information, then they might need additional support or additional learning or different examples, right, to help them get that concept.
Yeah, and that's why I do appreciate within high leverage practices how they explicitly focus on like what type of feedback are you giving them and is it guiding
Right.
feedback where they can understand what they did get and also what they didn't get, but not just that they didn't get it, but now what can I try to do or how can I understand this differently and then get a few more reps in and continue to get that feedback, not
Mhm.
only for academics, to actually break out constructive feedback into both academics as well as then that social emotional behavioral interactive side of the skill sets as well. But you're
Mhm.
right, with explicit instruction, if we're not providing that feedback in such a way that's did I get it? Did I not get it? Well, then, they don't know what's going on. And then how are we then supposed to attach what's next for us if we're walking through truly like an explicit instruction protocol? Like, how would we know what's next if we don't actually give them that feedback and they don't, they aren't able to perform that in a way that is meaningful for us to guide
Mhm.
our own instruction?
Right.
So speaking of different types of, constructive feedback, I know we've been talking a lot about, academics and how we're walking through curricular concepts, but explicit instruction is also really useful when it comes to social behavioral, interactions and understanding how that works or what's expected, what's not expected, and how do I like process through a situation to be able to show up in a certain kind of way. So I'm curious, how have you seen explicit instruction used on more of like the soft skills that's maybe not like our core curriculum that we're teaching?
I mean, there's both created programs for this, so like skill streaming, where it actually uses explicit instruction to model, provide opportunities to practice, and provide feedback to students for social, like specific social skills and academic skills. And then there's also things like champs, where you're really creating these very explicit expectations within the classroom for every single lesson and activity that you do. So the students know what are they expected to be doing. If they need help, how can they get help? If they need materials, like can they just get up and go get them themselves, or are they there at their table? Like it really tells them like all the different things of how can they be successful within that lesson. And I think again, you can really marry that with the academic instruction. So a lot of times when I did independent practice or groups within my classroom, I utilized champs, but then I would also have kind of like task lists where the students could check off, right? Like, first I'm supposed to do this, then this, then this, and they could do it, in whatever order they wanted. Like they could have that agency. But these are the items that we need to finish. If I get done early, here's what I can do, So it really just helps provide that visual and that reminder for especially students, with EBD and emotional behavioral challenges to really kind of maintain that focus, right? Like, they don't need to keep that in their head the whole time or just know that all the time. Like, it's very explicitly laid out visually in front of them so that they know what is expected of them and how they can participate successfully in the classroom.
Yeah, I love that that's the example you went with because when I first started teaching in alternative ed, I had the upperclassmen. So it was all, senior age or credit, kind of, whichever direction that fell. And I had come from middle school before I had moved into alternative ed. And I used champs all the time in middle school, right? Like, especially middle school. They're coming from elementary where they have one teacher to now every day you have as many teachers in one day as you had your entire career so far, right? So there's so many different things going on. I was like, we're just going to make this clean and clear, like straightforward. So I just brought that with me into alternative ed. And my colleagues heckled me. They were like, this is too babyish. Your guys aren't going to respect this, la, 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 all the things. But honestly, I got so much like gratitude from my students where they were like, thank you. Finally, a teacher who just tells me what they're expecting, that
Right.
it was just so there and it wasn't a secret. And I mean, there were times where I had forgotten to swap it over into, whatever the next expectations are. And so they're like, sweet, take the opportunity. And so they're like, oh, but I'm following the expectations. I'm like, cool, thanks. Can you go change it for me? They're like, yeah, I got you, miss. So like, but they saw it, they could see it, right? It was so explicit, and then there were no surprises. Like, a lot of my students were so used to being told what they weren't doing or getting called out for not meeting expectations, but for a lot of them, it's like, "Well, what expectations?" Right? Like, and it's, "Am I just supposed to read your mood today and figure out, how I'm supposed to interact with you?" And then also, especially in secondary, you've got different activities every day of the week on top of different teachers every, 45 minutes or 90 minutes or an hour, whatever your schedule is. There's still so many variables. So I found it so powerful to just say, this is what this is. This is what I'm looking for, to the point that we would even engage in some conversation like you were talking about agency, right? Like, what should those expectations be? If I've got to get this, piece of instruction through to you, how do we need to engage in such a way that that's going to be possible? Cool. Let's build that out as expectations. Can we agree to it? Great. Right. And then we just rock and roll from there. But yeah, that's explicit instruction, just like you were doing a think aloud for, reading or visualization or anything else. But it's like we're doing the same thing for then how are we expecting each other to interact and kind of go from there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think even with just within classroom management, right? You see it at the beginning of the year a lot of times where teachers will sit down with their class and do, like, here are our classroom rules, here's what it looks like, here's what it sounds like, here's what it feels like, right?
Hmm.
But then a lot of times they leave that, right, within the first week of school. Or it's like anytime I would see kind of like the overall behaviors in my classroom start to degrade, it's like, okay, I haven't touched base on that enough, right? Like we haven't practiced it enough. I haven't explicitly modeled it or discussed it with them. So time to go back, right?
Yeah, but I think that right there, right? It's the we do portion of this, right? I'm noticing slippage. So therefore, I
Mhm.
need to go back to the I do. Let's revisit some of these things. Let's, build back in to reset some of what, those norms are. And we can leverage a lot of those things in classroom management through explicit instruction of those expectations or routines or, whatever that may be. But there's an explicit instruction way to walk that through, not even just at the beginning of the year, literally anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. That's there was a middle schooler who was sent to the office by a teacher, and he had had his head down on the desk. And when he was asked like why he was sent to the office, he said, "I wasn't doing anything." And they ended up suspending the student, right? And in his mind, he wasn't doing anything. He didn't
Yeah.
know why he was sent down. His head was on his desk. He wasn't doing anything, right? He wasn't trying to be flippant. Like
Yeah.
that just literally is like so it's just clear, right? The mismatch and miscommunication of like expectations and understanding of, he was sent to the office because his head was on the desk and he wasn't doing the task that the teacher wanted him to do. But then he ended up getting suspended because he just didn't understand, right? Like why he was sent to the office to begin with. Because in his mind, he wasn't doing anything bad, right?
Right. And that's where I think being able to break down, I wasn't doing anything. Well, was the goal for you not to do anything or was the goal for you to do something? Right. Because
Yep.
sometimes the goal is, yeah, I don't want you to do anything. Like, not doing anything is a great decision right now. And there are other
Absolutely. You're done with
times.
your work. Great. If you want to sit with your head on your desk, perfect. Like,
Yeah, or I'm thinking even students who are, maybe more, I don't know, like externalizing or they're like getting in people's business or they're,
mhm,
physical, verbal, right? Like all those things to not do anything, honestly, is a win.
yeah,
So it would be like, well, I finally, wasn't blowing up, wasn't doing this, wasn't whatever, and that's a bad thing now. I'm supposed to be doing something. Like I've just been
yeah,
told not to do things for how long, and now all of a sudden I'm in trouble.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. So clearly that mismatch, right, of knowing what I should be doing when and why, right?
Yes. Gosh. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me about explicit instruction today. There's so many different like nuanced pieces of this. One conversation is not going to do it justice, especially not even if were to pick one academic topic or just talk social emotional behavioral learning. Like there are so many true criteria of what makes explicit instruction, but it is the I do, we do, you do, and we can leverage that in so many different ways. So thank you for painting all the pictures of all the different kinds of ways that explicit instruction could show up in our classrooms.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Working in a self contained, alternative education, therapeutic, or correctional classroom? Project Onward is a 6-strand cohort based project designed to help you build a strong, structured program for complex students who need extra specialized support. You'll get practical tools to set up clear routines, strengthen engagement, manage behavior, and plan instruction that actually fits the splintered needs of your students. By the end, you'll walk away with a complete, ready-to-use program that has been adapted to your local needs. Led by Heather Volchko, Lathrell Eisler, Jonathan Barbario, and Manny Wasias, Project Onward blends proven strategies with vetted experience, helping you move forward with confidence. If you're creating something from the ground up or looking to update what you've got, this project gives you the structure and clarity to do it well. If you support students with low incident needs, Project Base helps you design a consistent classroom built just for them. And if you're working in general ed or resource settings with behavioral challenges, Project Thrive gives you the tools to work with, not against, the flow of your classroom. Visit university.thresholdlearning.org to meet the team and get started today. Let's move onward, together.
Explicit instruction, or EI, is a highly structured, supportive, and systematic approach to teaching academic skills. It's about the teacher guiding the learning process from start to finish, starting with clear explanations or modeling, followed by guiding students through practice, and finally, providing opportunities for independent application to ensure mastery. This approach is particularly effective for students who are struggling to learn, as it breaks down complex tasks into manageable steps, offering clear direction every step of the way. What makes EI stand out is that it taps into research-based principles that are proven to enhance learning outcomes. These include active student engagement, ensuring high levels of success, comprehensive content coverage, and thoughtful instructional grouping. EI also allows for the use of scaffolding, making sure that the students are supported until they can perform tasks independently, as well as addressing different types of knowledge. Rosenshine's 6 teaching functions, reviewing, presenting new content in small steps, guided practice, corrective feedback, independent practice, and cumulative reviews, serve as the backbone of this method. The real power of explicit instruction lies in how it increases academic learning time, a key factor in student success. The more time students spend actively engaging in meaningful, well-structured learning experiences, the better their performance tends to be. When educators consistently implement EI, they create an environment where students, particularly those facing challenges, have a much greater chance of mastering the skills and content they need to succeed. When we talk about essential high leverage practices, or HLPs, there are a few that consistently show up across a range of teaching strategies, and one of the most prominent is HLP 16, which focuses on the use of explicit instruction. This practice is foundational because it plays a role in almost every aspect of supporting students, whether it's academic, social, or behavioral, and it's effective across all grade levels and content areas. Explicit instruction is one of those core techniques that underpins the implementation of many other HLPs, particularly those in the social, behavioral, and instructional domains. The reason explicit instruction is so critical is that it's not limited to one specified area of teaching. Whether you're helping a student improve their reading comprehension, manage their behavior, or develop social skills, you're likely using principles from this methodology. It's about clear, structured teaching that ensures students understand the what and the how of a task before they're expected to take it on themselves. That's why, for new professionals entering the field, understanding explicit instruction is key. It's like the gateway to mastering all the other HLPs, especially when it comes to supporting the unique needs of students with disabilities. Teachers who use explicit instruction effectively create lessons that are carefully sequenced and focused on essential content. They begin each lesson with a clear statement of both the learning goals and their expectations, ensuring that students know what they're working towards. Before introducing new material, these teachers review prior knowledge and skills, helping students make connections and build a foundation for the new content. Complex skills or strategies are broken down into smaller, manageable parts, making the learning process more approachable and less overwhelming. Throughout the lesson, clear and concise language is used to ensure students can follow along without confusion. Teachers also provide step-by-step demonstrations, especially when introducing new concepts, offering clarity through concrete examples. They make sure students have plenty of opportunities for guided practice, adjusting support levels based on the student's needs, and using scaffolded approaches that allow for distributed practice over time. Monitoring student performance closely, teachers provide immediate feedback, whether corrective or affirmative, ensuring that students stay on track and understand both that they're doing well and what needs improvement. The pace of the lesson is also carefully maintained, responsive to the students' needs to keep engagement high without overwhelming them. Teachers who excel at explicit instruction are attuned to their students' learning progress. They use strategic supports to help students organize and retain new knowledge, while continuously adapting their instruction to best meet the shifting needs of their students. School leaders play a crucial role in helping teachers implement explicit instruction effectively. By offering targeted instruction, professional development, and coaching, leaders can guide educators in how to thoughtfully plan and deliver lessons that incorporate key elements of explicit instruction. Observing teachers in the classroom allows school leaders to assess how well these instructional strategies are being used and to offer specific coaching or feedback on areas needing improvement. Additionally, support around breaking down complex skills and concepts is essential. Leaders should work closely with teachers or teams to design lessons that logically sequence these skills in a way that students can easily grasp. This process helps ensure that teachers not only understand the principles of explicit instruction, but can also apply them in a way that maximizes student success. Explicit instruction is a powerhouse of an educational methodology, celebrated for both its effectiveness and efficiency. Developed from over 4 decades of empirical research, explicit instruction, or EI, is built on well-defined principles that guide teachers in designing and delivering impactful lessons. This approach boosts academic learning time, a key factor linked to improved student achievement. EI isn't just a one-size-fits-all strategy. It's versatile and applicable across all educational settings, whether in general or special education, and for students of all ages and grade levels. While it benefits all learners, it's especially crucial for those who struggle. Even novice teachers can quickly grasp and adeptly use this method, making it a vital tool for supporting all students in their educational journey. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Join us next week when Heather sits down with our registered behavior technician, Manny Quesius, to talk about our next high-leverage practice.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider dropping a like and follow @ThresholdLearningTLC on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you like our show, share the podcast with your colleagues. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to promote the podcast. Let them know that they can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that they catch their podcast. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there. Attention educators pursuing behavior analysis certification and universities preparing them for success. Supervision with TLC offers 100% remote fieldwork supervision designed specifically for school-based professionals. Educators can earn their hours right in their schools without leaving their classroom, all while being supported by experienced BCBAs who understand the realities of education. With month-to-month scheduling, affordable rates, and both live video and asynchronous chat, our fieldwork supervision model is designed to fit into your life, not the other way around. We also invite universities to enhance their graduate programs in partnership with our team of practicing school-based BCBAs. Our fieldwork supervision model keeps students on track for certification by helping them connect their practice to all exam domains so that they can confidently pass the exam. Explore more at university.thresholdlearning.org/supervision or email supervision@thresholdlearning.org to connect. Supervision with TLC, where educators grow into behavior analysts.